Exodus 40. Let's look there together. Exodus 40. We've got some other things we want to say before we get to the consecration of the priests. And actually, before we start in 40, we'll get there in just a moment. Let's go to 36. Exodus 36. Let's go there first. So all of this gold and silver and bronze and these fabrics and all these things that were used in the construction of the tabernacle, where did all of that come from? Yeah, the plundering of Egypt, right? Okay, now, the people were told in Exodus 25 to bring free will offerings, to give whatever they desired to meet the needs for the construction of the tabernacle. And in chapter 36, look with me at verse 3. They received from Moses all the contributions which the sons of Israel had brought to perform the work in the construction of the sanctuary, and they still continued bringing to him free will offerings every morning. And all the skillful men who were performing all the work of the sanctuary came, each from the work which he was performing. And they said to Moses, "The people are bringing much more than enough for the construction work which the Lord commanded us to perform." So Moses issued a command, and a proclamation was circulated throughout the camp, saying, "Let no man or woman any longer perform work for the contributions of the sanctuary." And thus the people were restrained from bringing any more, for the material they had was sufficient and more than enough for all the work to perform it. So the contributions that were given were so many and so abundant that the workers, Bezalel and Aholiab and the other craftsmen, came to Moses and said, "We have way too much. Tell the people to stop bringing the gold and the silver and the bronze and so forth." Really great commendation of the people of Israel. Think about what they've just gone through with the breaking of the covenant when they made the golden calf. And Moses came down and broke the tablets of stone, and he was angry with them. And then God entered into the covenant with them again, and it's like there's this rejuvenated spirit, right? They're zealous again. They're excited about serving the Lord, so they bring all of these contributions, and it's way too much. Now, the worship is, let's see, I got off here on my slides. Can you put me on 160? Please, slide 160. Thank you. Exodus 38 now. Let's go there together. Exodus 38. Is that 160? Yep. Make it 161 then. I'm off on... there we go. I must have deleted a slide or something before I printed these off. Okay. Chapter 38, verse 21 through 31 discusses the different materials, but really the volume of the materials. Like verse 24 talks about all the gold that was used. The gold was 29 talents and 730 shekels, according to the shekel of the sanctuary. Verse 25 discusses the silver that was used. There are, of verse 28, 1,775 shekels was made from that. All the different pillars and the hooks and the things for all the curtains. The bronze is mentioned in verse 25. Okay. I know that we don't measure things according to talents, and we don't pay with shekels. I get that. But I want you to understand that this was an extremely expensive structure. I came across in my reading about this that this would have been something of the magnitude of over 1 metric ton of gold that was used. A metric ton is about 2,200 pounds. So if you do the math on this, okay, so pounds, 16 ounces, an ounce of gold. Anybody know what an ounce of gold is going for right now? It's nearly $3,000. $2,957 was this morning's price on 1 ounce of gold. A metric ton of gold would come out to somewhere around $100 million in today's money. Okay? That's how much gold went into this structure. This thing was beautiful. This thing was expensive. It was elaborate. This would have been an incredible thing to see. Now, in chapter 39, at the end of the chapter, when all the tabernacle is being made and the priestly garments are being made in chapter 39, verse 42, the sons of Israel did everything according to all that the Lord had commanded Moses. And Moses examined all the work, and behold, they had done it. Just as the Lord had commanded, this they had done. And so Moses blessed them. I appreciate the Waldrons making this comment in the book. They said, oftentimes we look at the Israelite people's history and we make fun of them. We talk about how they were always disobedient, how they were always messing up, and God was getting on to them and all of that. Well, here's a time when they did what they were supposed to do. They did everything right. And it brought glory to God, and Moses saw that they had obeyed God, and he blesses them, he praises them for their obedience. Now, chapter 40, verse 1, the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, on the first day of the first month, you shall set up the tabernacle of the tent of meeting. Okay, I know we've talked about the Jewish calendar just a little bit, okay, but I want you to notice what's said in verse 2. The first day of which month? The first month. Now, think back to Passover, Exodus 12, when the Israelites were told, when you observe the Passover, this is to be the first of months for you. So now we're how long after? We're a year after. Okay, so we're coming up now upon the next Passover. All right? So the Israelites have been gone from the land of Egypt for a year. And they begin to set up the tabernacle. And when this is done, verse 34, here's how it ends. Chapter 40, verse 34. Then the cloud covered the tent of meeting, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. Moses was not able to enter the tent of meeting because the cloud had settled on it, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. And throughout all their journeys, whenever the cloud was taken up from over the tabernacle, the sons of Israel would set out. But if the cloud was not taken up, then they did not set out until the day when it was taken up. For throughout all their journeys, the cloud of the Lord was on the tabernacle by day, and there was a fire in it by night, in the sight of all the house of Israel. So when they do everything that God instructed Moses, and then Moses instructed them, you build the tabernacle like this, so tall, so wide, so big, put all this furniture in it, make it this way. When they did all of those things as God said, God's presence came into the tabernacle. This must have been an incredible scene. The brightness, the grandeur, the glory of God, this would have been an amazing thing to behold. And Moses could not even see it because of how great this was. Now, you see there at the bottom of the slide, we're 2 weeks less than 1 year since they've left Egypt. Okay, the Passover was celebrated on the 15th day of the first month. So we're 2 weeks shy of 1 year celebrating the Passover. All right. Now that the tabernacle has been constructed and it's been erected, it is now time for all of the worship that is to take place inside and around the tabernacle. All of that now has to be put into order. So the entire congregation of the Israelites are summoned to the tabernacle area. Their camps, their tents, their campsite would have been all around. The tabernacle was at the center of the camp. But all the people are going to come and be near the tabernacle and see what is going to happen. They're going to see Moses as he consecrates the priests and he ordains them in the way that Leviticus explained. In Leviticus chapter 8, so let's go ahead and turn over there together. Leviticus 8, 1 through 7, we talked about on Sunday. It's all the different sacrifices that were explained and all the rituals were given. Now in Leviticus 8, the consecration of the priests is going to be discussed, and it's going to take place. Chapter 8 and verse 1, the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Take Aaron and his sons with him, and the garments, and the anointing oil, and the bull of the sin offering, the 2 rams, and the basket of unleavened bread, and assemble all the congregation at the doorway of the tent of meeting." So Moses did just as the Lord commanded him. Let me point out that expression. Moses, Israel, Aaron did just as the Lord commanded them. We're going to see that again and again. And I know that's a simple thing to observe, but it's important. Do you think in Exodus 40, when the tabernacle was constructed, that if Moses had said, "Okay, God, you've given me all these plans, and, well, you know what? I think it would be better if we did it this way. And so instead of having the holy place and the most holy place, what if we added a most holy place? Let's put a 3rd room inside there, and let's make some changes in, blue and scarlet thread. God, can't we do better than that? What about green and purple, or whatever? You get the idea. What if Moses had changed everything and the people built the tabernacle according to that set of instructions? Do you think God's glory would have filled the tabernacle? Knowing what we know about God from other scriptures, I would say no. So when Exodus and Leviticus and these books are saying they did it just like God commanded them to do it, we need to notice that and see the importance of that. Now, these priests are going to be anointed. Aaron is going to be anointed specifically, and there's more description that's given to Aaron's consecration. But the priests are being set apart. They're being distinguished from everybody else to say, these are the mediators. We talked about that on Sunday. The priests were mediators between God and man. The priests would be the ones who would teach the people the law, who would make the sacrifices and manipulate the blood and do all the things that were commanded them. And so they're mediating. And so this is a significant service that these priests are going through. What color was the garments that the priests wore? It was white garments, right? And there's the purification idea of that, right? I mean, brides don't get married in black dresses, okay? We understand that tradition and where that comes from. Unless she thinks it's a funeral, I guess, but surely that's not the way she's approaching the wedding. Also think about this, though. If you're the priest and you're administering sacrifices in white garments, how long do you think your garments stayed white? Not very long. Not very long. Those garments would have been stained and soiled with blood. They would have been red and pink, and their color would have been gross and nasty. And again, I make this point. Yes, because sin is gross and dirty and nasty. It's defiling. It ruins our lives, and God doesn't want us to have anything to do with it. He wants His people to be holy as He is holy, and we're going to see that in future chapters. Chapter 8 and verse 14, a sin offering is going to be given on behalf of Aaron and the priest, followed by verse 18, a burnt offering that is given after that, a dedication offering, as we talked about on Sunday. Then in verse 22, there are rams that are going to be given as offerings to God as well. Then these, if you drop down to verse 33, interesting instruction here. You shall not go outside the doorway of the tent of meeting for 7 days. This is talking to the priests now. Until the day that the period of your ordination is fulfilled, for he will ordain you through 7 days. The Lord has commanded to do as has been done this day to make atonement on your behalf. At the doorway of the tent of meeting, moreover, you shall remain day and night for 7 days, and keep the charge of the Lord, so that you will not die, for so I've been commanded. That's Moses saying, this is what you have to do. You're going to stay here for 7 days as we continue throughout this service. And so, thus, verse 36, Aaron and his sons did all the things which the Lord had commanded Moses. Okay, there again, you see that idea. They did everything the Lord commanded Moses. Now I'm going to make this observation with you. Aaron and his sons did all the things that Moses commanded. Now, I'm not going to develop that just yet, but I want you to tuck that away. Aaron and his sons, they knew what Moses commanded, and they did what Moses commanded. Joe?
It's amazing that Aaron is still allowed to play such a pivotal role in this process, given what just happened.
Yeah, given chapter 32, right? Yeah, good observation. I don't really have anything to add to that, do you?
No, it's just, God works through fallen people.
Yeah, okay, good. All right. Let's go to chapter 9. During these 7 days where the priests are being consecrated, there's days after that. For 12 days, there are princes or chief rulers from each of the 12 tribes that are going to start bringing carts and wagons filled with all kinds of precious gifts. They do that for the 7 days of the consecration plus 5 more days. Okay? And Numbers chapter 7 talks about this. We're not going to go and look at that. But I do, it's a very long chapter. It's like 86 verses or 89 verses or something. But every tribe sent exactly the same things. Okay, so you can go back and look. Down to the number. They all sent the exact same things. And this was going on for 12 days while these priests were being consecrated. Now let's go to Leviticus 9, and then let's see what is said there about the priests beginning their sacrificial service. Chapter 9, verse 1. It came about on the 8th day. Okay, so this would be 7 days of consecration, and then the following day, it's now time for them to begin their work of service. Moses called Aaron and his sons and the elders of Israel, and he said to Aaron, take for yourself a calf, a bull for a sin offering, and a ram for a burnt offering, both without defect, and offer them before the Lord. Then to the sons of Israel you shall speak, saying, take a male goat for a sin offering, a calf and a lamb, both 1 year old without defect, for a burnt offering, and an ox and a ram for peace offerings. Okay, I'm only reading all this about take this animal for this offering and so forth, to say these are the sacrifices that were described in chapters 1 through 7. Sin offerings, peace offerings, burnt offerings, okay? Now the people are actually doing those sacrifices that were described in the first 7 chapters. Now, verse 5. They took what Moses had commanded to the front of the tent of meeting, and the whole congregation came near and stood before the Lord. Moses said, this is the thing which the Lord has commanded you to do, that the glory of the Lord may appear to you. So Moses then said to Aaron, come near to the altar, offer your sin offering and your burnt offering, that you may make atonement for yourself and for the people. Then make the offering for the people, that you may make atonement for them, just as the Lord commanded. In verse 8, Aaron does that. Now, verse 15. He presented the people's, this is Aaron, he presented the people's offering. And he took the goat of the sin offering, which was for the people, and he slaughtered it and offered it for sin just like the first. He did this. He did this. Who? Aaron. During the consecration ceremony, it was Moses who was taking the lead and consecrating them according to the Lord's commandment. Now it shifts from Moses to Aaron taking the lead and performing the rituals of the ceremony here. Do you see that? You see that difference in who is leading this? Now, verse 22. Aaron lifted up his hands toward the people and blessed them, and he stepped down after making the sin offering and the burnt offering and the peace offering. And Moses and Aaron went into the tent of meeting. When they came out and blessed the people, the glory of the Lord appeared to all the people. Then fire came out from before the Lord and consumed the burnt offering and the portions of fat on the altar. And when the people saw it, they shouted and they fell on their faces. Okay, let's make sure we connect what's happening here. Chapter 40 of Exodus. The tabernacle is constructed. Everything is set up. The furniture has been put into place and everything is now ready. God's presence comes down into the structure. Now in Leviticus, Aaron and the priests have been consecrated. Now it's time for them to begin their priestly duties, which they do in chapter 9. And all of these sacrifices have been given by Aaron. And when everything was done properly, what happens at the end of chapter 9? Fire comes down from heaven, burning up all these sacrifices or what's left of them. This is God's fire coming in approval, right? God's presence is here with what the people are doing. Like things are going really good for the people of Israel right now. And then we go to chapter 10. And things drastically change. In Leviticus chapter 10, 2 of Aaron's sons die. 2 of Aaron's sons who, you remember earlier I said, I want to make mention of the fact that Aaron and his sons did all that the Lord commanded. Okay? Aaron's sons, Nadab and Abihu, they were there throughout all of this. All of this interaction with Moses. And Moses is saying, this is what the Lord said. This is how we do this. You do this just exactly how God said. Nadab and Abihu heard every word of that. They went through the consecration ceremony, all of the particular details and everything being done just so. They were there for all of that. So when we come to chapter 10, and we read in verse 1, now Nadab and Abihu, the sons of Aaron, took their respective fire pans, or their incense fire pans, and after putting fire in them, placed incense on it, and offered strange fire before the Lord. How does verse 1 end? Which he did not command them. Now, we could spend a lot of time talking about, well, what specifically did they do wrong? What was their sin? What was their mistake? I don't know what it was. There's some different ideas about that. But what I do know is what the end of verse 1 says. They did something God did not command them to do. They should have known better. After hearing everything that Moses has told them that God said to him, and Aaron was a part of all of this, they heard all of this, they knew better. But they didn't obey God. And so now, in verse 2, fire came out from the presence of the Lord and consumed them. At the end of chapter 9, fire came down from the presence of the Lord and it consumed the sacrifices. That was pleasing to God. Now the fire comes down from heaven and it kills Aaron's 2 sons. Now, verse 3. Moses said to Aaron, "It is what the Lord spoke, saying, by those who come near me," who would that be? Priests. "By those who come near me, I will be treated as holy. And before all the people, I will be honored." And so Aaron therefore kept silent. We need to think about the significance of this. Who saw what Nadab and Abihu did? Say it. Everybody. The whole congregation of Israel has come near the tabernacle to see all of these things taking place. And now, 2 of the priests, the leadership of the people, disobeyed God's instructions. This is a big deal. If God just lets this go, well, you know what? I guess they just weren't paying attention to lecture that day. I'll give them a pass on this. No, they knew better. And if God overlooks this, what does that say to the entire nation of Israel? By those who come near me, I will be regarded as holy. Make this connection. Disobedience to God in this case was considered to treat God as unholy. God won't care if we make this change. It's not a big deal. God won't care if we change what He said and do it this other way. They found out the hard way. And when it says Aaron held his peace, I take that to mean Aaron couldn't deny what had happened. He knew God was in the right. This was God's prerogative. He's the judge of all. And if He determines this is what needs to be done, then so be it. Wayne?
Just a thought I'm having about that fire, this unauthorized fire. One of the things he said in chapter 6 was that the fire on the altar was to be kept burning day and night. So for them to need fire from another source to do an offering tells me the fire, someone might have let the fire go out.
So that's one of the theories, that they didn't keep the altar burning as they should have. It's possible. In the book, they talk about the teaching that comes later with the Day of Atonement in Leviticus 16 and some of the regulations about that and the source of the fire. And yet, is that what's going on here? Maybe, but that legislation doesn't come until after they're dead, so it's hard to know. But what we know for sure is what verse 1 says. God did not command it, whatever it is that they did. Okay? After seeing 57 times, that's not an actual number, but chapter 8 and chapter 9, as the Lord commanded, as the Lord commanded, as the Lord commanded, and then, He didn't command that. Bree?
I just think the severity of disobedience in the Old Testament, like the gentleman that reached to touch the Ark of the Covenant, and he fell dead, he died. What was his name? Uzzah?
Uzzah.
Yeah, it's the same thing. Like, if God said not to do it, that man was probably just trying to do something innocent, like, oh, it's falling down, let me help it. But God said not to touch it, and he died.
Right. Yeah, and, of course, there's a part of me that's tempted to say, oh, yeah, and when we come to that story, but it's going to be months before we get to that story, so let's make this observation right now, okay? It wasn't just that Uzzah touched the ark. There's a lot of things going wrong in that story. How were the people supposed to transport the ark? They were supposed to carry it on poles on their shoulders. They weren't doing that. They put it on a trailer, was what we would, a cart that was pulled by oxen. The priests, the Kohathites specifically, were the ones who were supposed to carry it. They're not doing it. Every rule about the transportation of the ark, they've broken, right? Uzzah was the one that bore the brunt of it. Read.
It's more than God didn't tell them not to do something. He didn't permit it. Like, He didn't say,
My sermons are like that too, Reed. They just come out without clarity. He told them what to do. He did not tell them what not to do. Yeah. Good. Okay, Jeff, go ahead.
The thing I like about this example of God saying, yeah, we want to come up with all these ideas of what's strange fire. When you think about fire, what is more generic than fire? Fire is fire. Fire burns. Fire consumes. It just doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You know, I like that he used this. That there's no way you can deal and say, well, we just did it this way. We like to do about sin. It wasn't quite, but sort of. Fire's fire.
Yeah.
And yet, it wasn't.
Right. They didn't do something right. Yeah. For whatever that was, they didn't do something right. Now, yes, go ahead. Okay, and then Joe.
I just can't help but admire Aaron in the story because he just saw two of his sons die in front of him. But, I mean, Moses talked to him very silently.
Yeah.
But still, like, when everything around him, he's like a golden calf, but now, after that, he's offered his sin offering, he's following after God. And even when he saw two of his sons die, he still didn't wait.
Good. Joe?
I think even though this story and some others communicate the severity of judgment, at the same time there's just as many stories of God showing mercy in the Old Testament toward, usually it's due to ignorance, not always, but usually due to someone's ignorance. I think about the contrast, like they find the wall and they rebuild the temple later, and they realize all the things that they were doing wrong. God had struck them dead at that point, like this scenario.
Yeah.
The distinction there, it's not, he shows different treatment based on whether the person.
According to their knowledge. Yeah, and that's what I've been harping on all night, right? Aaron's sons knew exactly what was expected of them, and they disobeyed it. Kyle?
This might be kind of a simple concept and something that we know, but I think it's good to think about it here. The Old Testament God gives us so that we can learn about who He is, His nature, what He expects, and we can apply that under the New Covenant as well. So when we see an example like this, where God has given them specific commandments, and they do something that He didn't, not necessarily something He didn't say to do, like Reed was referring to, but they did something extra or different, He had a very distinct reaction. And so, while maybe if we do something not quite right, we're not going to fall dead like Nadab and Abihu, but we know what God thinks about it. From the way that He reacted
Yeah.
to this, we know what that means to Him. And so we need to think about that when we read our Bible, when we read our scriptures, and we are applying those things in worship or in our lives, and God has something that He's told us to do. And we think, well, maybe if we do it this way, it might be a little better. We need to say, wait a minute. That's not exactly what God said. And I can't try and make it better or do something extra because God has proven and shown us that He doesn't like it.
Yeah, good. All right, Rick, did you have something? No. Okay. All right, so we've kind of been hinting at this, but we haven't just gone there. So let's just go there, okay? God only struck people dead in the Old Testament, right? No, that's not true. Even in the New Testament, we see God acting in this way. There's not as many stories, I grant that, but there's also not as much time. I mean, the New Testament covers a period of about 100 years, whereas the Old Testament covers a period of about 6,000. Okay, so it's quite a different thing there. But at the beginning of the church in Jerusalem, in Acts chapter 5, God strikes down a husband and wife, Ananias and Sapphira, for lying to him because of what they have done. Now, the circumstances are not the same. I get it. Ananias and Sapphira are not leadership the way that Nadab and Abihu were. I know there's a lot of differences. But what this does teach us is, hey, God in the New Testament, He's still really concerned about purity and holiness among His people. And He doesn't want His people to be involved in sinful behavior. He makes a lesson out of these two. It says that in verse 11 of chapter 5 that fear came upon the whole church when they saw what happened to this pair. All right, let's close with this. So we've mentioned this already. A year has passed since the Israelites have left the land of Egypt. It is now time for the second Passover to come along. You can read about that in Numbers 9. I may or may not have a sermon on that soon, so I'm going to save that for now. Wayne, you got a comment you want to make?
The parallel in my mind in today's world for us as Christians, God did not tell us we could not be sprinkled to be saved. He told us to be baptized.
Yeah, there's
So how can we, those who do it,
change. Yeah,
choose some other way
there and.
to reach salvation?
Right, and we can multiply illustrations of that. Yeah, that's right. There's been a lot that has happened to the people of Israel in this 1 year period. They were released from bondage in Egypt. They crossed the Red Sea on dry land. God has provided water and food for them as they've been traveling. They have come to Mount Sinai, and a covenant was made with them, which they promptly broke just a few weeks after it was made, and then they restored that covenant, or God restored that covenant with them, and the law of Moses was given, the instructions for the tabernacle. They spent months building the tabernacle, and there has been a lot that has happened in this 12-month period that we've covered in our month and a half that we've been going through this book. Okay. So we're going to stop on that point for tonight. You guys got any additional comments that you want to make or questions? Yes, ma'am.
I would say that he had to do something, because if he just let things go, it can transpire and then everybody think they can go out of order. So I think God is always bigger than us, and it's like these two are, yes, we killed those two, but it's like for the multitude, like to save everybody.
Yes, to teach everybody a lesson. Yes, thank you for that. The easiest way to learn a hard lesson is to learn it from somebody else doing it by experience, right? Learn by somebody else's mistake and not have to do it yourself, and that's what's happening. Good.
That's the whole point of Romans 15:4. This is the things that were written before were written for our learning.
Yeah, that's right. Good. David?
You mentioned Romans 9 a minute ago. Maybe I just heard Romans 9.
I don't think I did, but I might have.
Expounds on this whole point about God will have mercy on those who he chooses to, and will punish those. He uses Jacob and Esau as examples. We don't understand why sometimes God struck somebody dead on the spot, and why other times people did things that were clearly not right and were not
Right.
dead on the spot.
Yeah.
That just shows how different our thinking is from God's.
But even in that, and your point is right, God's choice is never arbitrary, right? There's always more to the story that we may not be aware of, right? Those things all factor in. Joe, real quick.
That shows the power of a project when they're focused. The people are focused on one goal, create that excellence. That's where they shine.
Yeah.
And they just randomly left alone.
Good. Good. All right.